I really, as a kid, stopped following organized. I mean, I would remove myself after
Yeah.
confirmation.
How about MCC or other like queer LGBT slash whatever, you know, Catholic Church? I think there's also Dignity. There's New Hope Ministry or
I feel
anything like
like
that.
it's like my theology is not tied to a
Not tied to
specific
church. Okay. Yeah.
thing, and that,
Actually, a lot of trans people I've talked to have said that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like Christian ethics.
Yeah.
I like Buddhist ethics.
Yeah.
I like, it's like
Yeah.
the ethical structures, I think, make a lot of
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
for, human care,
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
human love and relationships. I
Yeah.
think that they all make
And
good sense.
and Christians who put themselves in service of other people, true service, not the self-serving service.
Right.
The
Right.
true service. I love them. I love
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
And I've always gotten along with and had great discussions with people who are involved in or who practice religions that
Yeah.
I don't know that much about. I
Yeah.
mean, there was someone I worked with who was Zoroastrian.
Oh yeah. Right.
Another like one of my colleagues when I was in graduate school
That's old school.
was LDS.
LDS. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and he and I had the best
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
And we're still friends. But again,
The last person I interviewed was in LDS. Yeah.
that's interesting.
He was in even a missionary. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What did he come out? Was he out?
He's not currently a practitioner, but that's how he grew
Okay.
up. That's how he grew up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
well,
more of a Buddhist now.
yeah, and I don't know where I would like pin my,
Yeah, you don't have to.
spiritual, trappings, but
It's your business too. I mean, all that stuff is so private. I mean, even if you very strongly declare that yourself to be Christian, your relationship is still with God.
Exactly.
It's not with other people. I mean, it's good to have community. It's good to be a part of a church. I mean, all that stuff is good. But when it ultimately comes down to it, it's you and your Maker.
right.
Basically.
And my spouse and I never talk religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because both of us regard it as a private
Yeah. Yeah.
experience. And I mean, I know that she's Christian. She grew up Episcopal, but I don't follow any of it.
Yeah.
I like the stories of the saints, just like I
Yeah.
like the, Hindu mythologies.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like the, they're
Yeah.
great stories.
Yeah,
They're,
yeah.
it's like fascinating.
In particular, actually, that was one of my first things that I studied when I was younger, when I was kind of a budding feminist, was like, the female saints. Like,
Oh,
because
right.
They did such amazing things.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
and the iconography around them is really
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I was in graduate school for art, I I had to take a lot of art history because my undergraduate
Right.
wasn't in
Right.
art. So, but I
Yeah.
happened upon Ardhanarishvara,
Oh, I don't
who
know.
was the embodiment of like male and female
Oh, okay.
in Indian sculpture.
Sure,
I
okay.
think that that deity has more than one name. So like, I'm not sure the most common name
Sure.
is used, but when I discovered that deity in graduate school and was like, I found my peeps.
Yeah.
And I also like the shame I experienced in coming out was not related to the shame of being trans.
Oh, really?
It was more that I felt that I had to hide it from my son who was coming out. And that,
Interesting.
that I needed him to
Well,
have his own journey.
It sounds like you were both hiding, right?
Yeah, kind
He
of.
was hiding stuff for you. You were hiding stuff from him. But you thought you were protecting him in a way.
I felt that it was for him to find himself. That without undue pressure from me,
Sure.
or whether he might feel pressure, like
Sure.
I just
Yeah.
and that he said to me, Probably technically I'm non-binary, but I am always going to, like, I always want to be seen as a man.
Yeah.
I always will present as a man.
Yeah.
And
Well, also there's your, your public persona, and then there's your interior persona. And I'm going to say everybody has that.
yes.
Everybody has that. Businessmen who wear their suits, do they wear their suits at home? No. They strip that stuff off and they put on some sweatpants when they're home. You know?
Right. And I think you're absolutely right that the difference between public and private persona,
Yeah. Yeah.
and is it persona at all when
Yeah.
you're at home? Like how I regarded myself, like, I mean, I use my son's language because that helped me to solidify. Like, no, I'm non-binary. I sort of exist on a continuum of, male to female is
Yeah.
like mostly male, but I also felt like some of my choice to remain non-binary is because of my relationship and because of my relationship with Sabrina,
Okay.
my partner, and also politically. Men are assholes.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry. There are lots of men I love. I have brothers who I adore.
I'm going to disagree with that.
Like, not all men.
Yeah.
But the world of men has hurt a lot of people. And,
The world of men is just the world, though.
well,
And women are actually the majority.
well, that I know is true. But I also, I just, felt like, well, it's not right for me. I present as male. I just had a name change and haven't even finalized all of the name change stuff. But, I want my ID to say male because I feel safer.
Yeah, it's a protection, definitely.
It's
Yeah.
like, I want to be able to travel to any country
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, some places like Texas the Texas GOP just passed this really strange, regressive platform that, I mean, I
saw that platform.
Yeah, it's like
It's hideous.
Anti-gay, like anti-trans. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And they want to take every legal protection away from trans people. Like no legal protection at all. No ability to change any of your documentation or anything. It's crazy.
Yes.
Crazy.
And I have relatives who live in Texas, and I wonder because I feel like, I feel that there are, and maybe they'll find some more genetic components to how the brain is structured.
Sure.
Well,
They actually already have that evidence. But we don't actually have to have any justification for being trans.
Exactly.
We just are.
Right.
It's not like we're hurting anybody. I'm
I
not
know.
going around to hurt anybody because I look like a dude and I have a beard. I'm just a nice fellow who understands women very much.
Well, and I will never deny, and I told my own kids, I will never deny that lived experience.
Yeah.
I was
I don't
socialized
either.
as a
I don't
girl.
either.
I was socialized as a woman.
Yeah.
I rejected all of the women's social, it's like I rejected it with every ounce of my being.
I just didn't quite fit in. Like I wanted to because I wanted to be with the girls, but they kind of rejected me in a way, and I just didn't fit. And they knew it too.
And our family is very, female dominated.
Okay.
The women are strong.
Sure.
The
What's
men
your
are
ethnic background, by the way? Are you Irish or
Scots-Irish.
Okay, there you go. That's me too, with a little bit of Viking in there.
I could see a little Viking.
Yes, I'm a little Viking.
But I also, I what I love is that it's sort of clansmanship that that you're with your people, and that
Yes.
I was really worried about losing that
Especially
with my
in a
sisters.
big family.
Yeah, because
That's a lot of relationships to work through.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the steadfast ones and the hesitant ones. There's only one who seems to be a little hesitant.
Still, after all this time?
Well, I think she just regarded it as like a colossal pain in the ass. Like too much work on her part.
Okay.
I don't agree with it. I think if I were...
Well, but what is the work that she has to put in? I mean, calling you he or they, what's the work there? I don't know.
You know what? And I don't know either. And I don't know, and I don't understand it myself, but I also feel like others have stepped up and said, don't worry about that. You're okay. We love you. We're not going to change. You are part of the family.
Yeah.
You are
Awesome.
part of us.
Awesome.
And so, like, it's not like it didn't go unnoticed by the others.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, you come from them.
Right.
I come from my parents. It's not like I'm some aberration.
Oh, right.
I am a part of them.
Well,
you know?
and if you look at any of the birth order studies, and it's like the families who have 4 or 5 boys, the younger ones are more. Oh, sorry. Yeah. The younger ones are more likely to be gay. They have a higher percentage of like, and I think that it's like I'm a middle kid. I have 3 older brothers. I had 2 older sisters. One of them died, but and then all the rest are girls. So like, I think I was like, I was meant to be that, that gay dude in the middle of the family who's the peacemaker, who's the,
in between, non-binary.
Yeah, who's the in between.
Yes.
And honestly, non-binary works for me.
Yeah.
And
and I gotta say too, I know some older trans men who have taken testosterone for longer than I have, who have actually adopted a more non-binary identity after identifying completely as men for a really long time.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
It's so interesting because it's almost like they've evolved in their own identity.
Right.
For a long time, you kind of had to be one way, Either,
right.
Either you're a woman or you're a man. And now, the younger people are kind of opening things up a bit. Bless them for doing that.
Oh, you know what? I have to say.
Yeah.
When there was no way I was not going to be coming out in a public realm. And my students, when I first came out, I said, which was, okay, wait a minute, 2017, 2018, the end of the school year, 17, 18.
Okay.
And I have a lot of very traditional Latino boys and boys who are like second generation Americans from Ethiopia. And when I said, I think next year I'm just going to go by my last name.
Okay.
And one of the more traditional, like, kind of macho boys, looked at me, and he kind of looked me over, and he said, I think that suits you better. And so I was like, okay, that's what it's going to be. Told my administrator, told my peers, like, one of my administrators really loves...
You got the tween stamp of approval.
Yes, I got the tween stamp of approval.
That's a hard one to get.
And the kids were just so much better about using the correct pronouns.
Yeah.
And...
Because it's not hard at all, actually.
No, and I also beg to differ with the folks who say, I just can't use they, them, because it's not grammatically correct. Well, it is, actually.
It is.
But
it's been accepted by, the dictionaries and the New York Times,
Oh, right.
I mean,
and wasn't it one of the big, it was like...
Yeah, it was a big controversy when they did accept it, But that was quite a while ago.
Well, and also they made it the word of the year.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it was
yeah,
like
that's right.
one of the
That's right.
dictionaries
That's right.
did, like Merriam-Webster,
Yep,
or one
yep.
of those.
Yep.
But
Also, we've had different kinds of pronouns and ways that we have addressed people in the English language before. Like the Quakers very famously use thy, then, and thy and thou, and they did that because of class issues.
right.
But there's different ways that we have. English is not that narrow.
Right.
It's not that narrow. It's a living language. We use it every day.
And I just like being out and being out
Yep.
in the world. While I felt incredibly exposed and uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's
and-
very tender when you start that.
Yeah.
So tender.
Then
So we were talking about, before we took a break to deal with the dogs, how people were, I guess, reacting to you. Can you continue with that a little bit? Because it was hard probably to hear what you were saying. Like the tenderness of being out, being exposed.
Oh, I absolutely felt like I had walked out of the house without a stitch of clothing on.
Wow.
I really felt, and that was not what I expected at all. Because, I've been a part of the LGBTQ community
Right.
forever.
Right.
Who cares how I identify myself? I'm comfortable. I was comfortable as someone. I always identified as queer, not gay, not lesbian. Queer. I'm just
Yeah.
queer. I know this
Yeah.
to be myself.
Yeah.
And
Queer is different.
and when I came out at school, there were multiple people around me who said, okay, well, whatever.
So we have just a few more minutes here.
Okay.
And but I was thinking we would actually talk about something slightly different, but it connects to what we were getting to before. So there's a difference between Virginia's laws, Maryland's laws, and Washington, D.C.'s laws, probably. If you could just kind of summarize that would be good, because you live really at the nexus of this, and you've lived in all these
Right.
places. If you could summarize that and like how it's affecting what's going on here, that would be probably good.
I cannot say how specifically
Yeah.
things have parsed out, but I can tell you how it feels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my sense of it.
Yeah.
In Northern Virginia, it's a pretty liberal enclave, and but there are a lot of really vocal, outspoken, anti-gay, lesbian, trans folks there, and they have, with the whole, discussion of critical race theory and the LGBTQ community, like influencing children. There's
And
the
does
whole.
that come right off of what DeSantis did in Florida?
I don't know if it comes off of that, but I think it's that right shift.
Sure.
And that, I know a couple of my old teacher friends participated in library activities where, the whole band, the new governor in Virginia was like basically ran on a platform that was like anti-critical race theory, and they're also anti-LGBTQ.
Are they banning books?
They were.
Okay.
And
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of liberty there.
and it's pretty, like, to me, that's very dangerous.
Yes, very dangerous.
In where we live in Maryland, it's very, very liberal. But once you go out and get closer to the shore, go a little further south, a little further northwest, it's still pretty conservative.
Okay.
And
But the laws, how is that affecting it? Like, do you feel safer in a place like this with more protections, or?
absolutely,
Yeah.
I hardly think about it.
Okay.
And that's the difference between teaching in Virginia.
Be careful about something.
Teaching in Virginia and teaching here
Yeah.
is that I don't feel at all threatened here. Where there I felt like I had to be careful, like what books I brought into my classroom. And as a...
Were you kind of being watched?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so, because they respected my teaching, my teaching abilities.
Sure.
And I had a lot of leeway
Yeah.
at my school. Here, I also have a lot of leeway. And I bring in a lot of, like, really rich, diverse, thought-provoking books
Yeah.
that I share with my students.
Yeah.
And I've gotten nothing but support here.
Yeah. Does that include, like, people of color and
Oh, yeah,
LGBT
absolutely.
people? And,
yes, because...
Yeah. It's interesting because, people keep saying that teachers are groomers and that they're teaching about sex and stuff, and that is not what they're doing. Sex acts are not being, talked about. The not even affectionate relationships are being talked about. It's just relationship. People have gay parents.
People have gay parents, and not only do they have gay parents, they have siblings who may be trans. They have,
right.
They have lots of friends in the school who may be trans. And, that doesn't mean that sometimes kids don't say stuff.
Sure.
That's, like, inappropriate. But I usually walk...
it's middle school. I mean...
Oh, yeah.
That's where that's where they test all those...
They're testing it all out.
Yeah,
and
test out
I
those
walk
boundaries.
right up to them and say, I really don't like that.
Yeah. I had an experience recently, and it was quite painful, actually. So my face was masked up. I was helping on a sped bus, actually, up in Alaska, and my face was covered up. I was covered up because it was like 50 below. I'm not kidding. It was 50 below outside. We were helping, these little tiny kids get up on and off of the bus. I was helping the driver, and there was one middle schooler who got on who was like, all he could, gauge me by was kind of my overall body shape, which is kind of round, and my voice, which is a little bit higher. And so he started calling me a girl. And I said, no, that's not who I am. And then he just kept doing it because he could tell that he had hurt my feelings. I'm somebody who it's very hard for me to mask my feelings, even if I'm wearing a mask. Okay. And then he did it a couple more times, and I said, I just looked at him straight, and I said, you know that what you're doing is wrong, and you're better than that. And he was like, he apologized to me. He got it.
Right.
That he knew he was being disrespectful, and that's not what you do. So I was really heartened by that. I really liked that.
I also think some of it is how you approach it. If you became immediately defensive and angry and and were like striking out,
no,
his reaction may not.
I was trying to bring out the best in him. Like,
exactly.
You know that what you're doing is wrong. Come on, be better than that.
I had a student who referred to me as it.
Oh, great.
And I shut down the class and just said,
great.
Stop. Everybody, have a seat.
Yeah.
Let's just have a little chat.
Yeah.
And so I just talked to them and just said...
What did you say specifically?
I said, when you use the term it for another person, you're basically denying them their humanity.
Right.
And I said, I'm old. I got a thick skin.
Yeah.
You're not going to hurt me by doing that, but
I think
want you to know it's just not okay.
I think the term gender ideology also does that too.
Right.
Instead of just talking about trans people, they call it an ideology.
It's not an ideology. It's a person.
It's also not a movement. We're talking about individual people here. Okay? We're talking about real people that you know.
Oh, yeah. And but he just like kind of put his head down. He goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I won't do it again." And I just said, and I called him by his first name, and I said, "If you ever want to talk about anything, just ask me." And I also said, to the kids out in the room, I said, "Just remember, you're all growing and changing. We don't ever stop changing.
That's right.
Hopefully we keep growing as as we get older, and also, like, just because this is, like, I'm telling you I didn't like it, but it doesn't mean that you have to make up to me in some way. It's okay. And also to
You
say
dealt
that,
with it. You dealt with it.
And for them to also, like, be aware, like, and when I make mistakes, I apologize.
That's right.
Just
like I made a mistake at the beginning of this interview. I called you he.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I could have come out and said my pronouns right away.
Right.
I mean, even though,
But I had made an assumption.
We knew the parameters, right?
Sure.
But also modeling those little, those little faux pas, those little mistakes, and recovering from them and just moving on.
Yes.
Helps them to understand, the importance of specificity of language, and also that they're okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to ask.
Yeah, and adults make those mistakes all the time. Trans people make those mistakes, misgendering other people. I mean, it just happens. So, if you make a mistake, apologize. Oops. That's my dog. He's shaking the camera. He's shaking the table. So if you make a mistake, most people are not going to bite your head off. I mean, occasionally you might meet a trans person who has just had it up to here. They've experienced...
Yeah, we don't know what their day was like.
Yeah, they've experienced so much discrimination, and like on a daily basis, and maybe even some violence, and they've just had it up to here. So maybe you're saying something to them is their breaking point. But please, if you are, a stable person and you have a good life and stuff, just try and take that with, a grain of salt. Be patient. Trans people right now are dealing with so much stress. So much stress. Even me, even this person here, we are very stable people. We have loving relationships. We, live a pretty good life. Even we are undergoing so much stress. Imagine if we were other people of color, people who are very poor, people who don't have access to health care, people who don't have people in their lives that love them. Imagine that. So please be patient with trans people, even if they maybe seem upset a little bit too much. Okay.
Or if you see them on a bad day.
Yeah, on their worst day. Just give them some love, or maybe some space if they need it.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
No, I did have a couple people at work who would just say to me, like, "You seem more angry lately," and I was just like, and I think that they were implying that I was taking testosterone. And
that's so juvenile.
I know. Well, I also think it's lack of exposure.
Yeah.
So what I did was I took a step back and I said, let me just tell you about the last 5 years of my life.
Yeah.
Which I've kept under my hat all this time.
Yeah. Well, and then also, people do that all the time. If people come out in various ways, then they ascribe strange, things to their behavior. Like when women come out as gay, I remember when I was younger, people would say that I was man-hating or something. And I didn't hate men. I would get angry with them sometimes, but not because I was a lesbian particularly, because they were just saying some stupid stuff.
Right. And I also think, we're all creatures of our environment.
Yeah.
And,
what is that?
It's my phone. Telling me to leave school.
It's like a jungle out here.
There should be crickets. But anyway, just that thing of, like, the trans man's broken arm syndrome. Everything's related to your testosterone.
Oh, I see.
Like, it's like everything's seen through the filter of you taking testosterone, which, I mean, I don't think that happens as much around here.
And then you just turn it around to them. Well, you act like that every day, so maybe it's your testosterone. No, not really. Not really. I don't believe in that.
No, I also feel like, I have always had a temper. I've always had a very long fuse.
Sure.
But once that fuse is like
Yeah.
tripped,
I'm like that too, actually. I'm patient until I'm not. And
Yeah.
then boop, that's it. Okay. Yeah.
and my partner's exactly the same way. I wouldn't describe her as patient, but more like measured, measured, and then ballistic. But I also feel like,
or just not anymore. Stop. That's it.
yeah,
You know, because some people, they really enjoy doing that, being antagonistic and you know. So why engage with them?
it's not fun.
Nope. It's that pretty much describes the internet.
I agree with that. I do feel like, though, there are good
Watch
spaces. Oh shit! Sorry. There are good spaces on the internet. There are good spaces on the internet. There are nice communities
Yeah.
here and there. But mostly we're just anonymous humans out here rolling around in the, in the thick of it, trying to live our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I really, when I find myself online too much, I really try and go do something like go to a park, hang out with my dog, go to a bar or something like that, just get offline. You're not going to solve any problems really online. I mean, there's a lot of propaganda online, and sometimes that can work. But
Well,
it's good to go out and enjoy the sunshine and life.
And when you get with your people,
Sure.
it's very easy to just be in that little insular world,
Right.
and feel like, wouldn't it be perfect if the whole internet was like this? Well, after a while, it just gets boring.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I have zero interest in stirring up the pot.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think things need to be said.
Yeah, and also, I mean, that's the whole idea around my project, is that there's diversity within the trans community.
Right.
There's racial and ethnic diversity and, that kind of thing, class diversity, but also people's perspectives. There's, religious or political or whatever. There's also quite a bit of diversity there, and that's what I'm really trying to highlight. Some people are a little offended by that, because I have, interviewed some conservatives, and they feel like, oh, they're the devil or something. But everybody that I have, most everybody, I will say that there's an exception to that, has been very thoughtful. And I've really enjoyed all these interviews. So.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
And like, you asked me why I wanted to do this.
Yeah.
And like, I just happen to be in a family that, like, we're all helper bees.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
it's also interesting for me to talk to and meet other trans people.
Sure.
And like, I've enjoyed chatting with you.
It's
and
fun for me too, because I
yeah.
lived in a cabin by myself for 3 years.
Oh, good Lord.
No, it's wonderful for me.
I know
With somebody with big
Yeah.
family, with a big family and stuff like that, that's probably an issue for you. But for me, it was heaven.
I consider myself to be a homebody.
Okay.
I do like social interaction,
Sure.
but on my own terms.
Yeah.
And,
Well, imagine doing that with 9 months of winter too.
for God's sake.
I loved it though.
and-
Hauling my water, going out to the outhouse, pouring fuel oil in the tank so I can, unfreeze my little home.
I have always talked to my kids about wanting to do northern,
Sure.
like to do midnight sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's the sun does not go down right now where I was living. Right now, there'll be about a month more of this. Yeah.
well, before COVID hit, I told my oldest son, let's go to Sweden.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because he speaks Swedish really well.
Okay.
Let's go to Sweden and just see what it's like above the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, and the weather there is much more mild than Alaska, and you'll see the northern lights up there as well. And
Right.
Yeah, I would love to go to Sweden as well. I'm actually part Norwegian, and I would love to go there and see the old wooden churches that they have there.
Oh my God.
The stave churches.
Those are amazing.
Yeah.
those are like
those are what inspires them is actually pre-Christian. I mean, they look kind of like the Baroque, with the spires. And stuff.
Right,
but they're actually
those like Gothic, like heavy Gothic.
That's it. Like in Spain and France and stuff. But what it is actually Old Norse religion that is peeking through Christianity.
Love that.
Because they are meant to look like trees. They're meant to look like conifer trees.
Right.
And they always have a central post in it with, often the pews are facing that post.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? And they often will have a well there, and it's not just for water there either. It's like it's ritual.
Ritual bathing.
Some of them, yeah, and some, more than that. But and there's all and some of those places they've also found ritual objects and bones that were buried and that sort of thing. Because oftentimes, churches, whatever the religion is that's coming in, will take over old spaces,
right.
I mean, some of these places, they're perfect. They're like prominence on the landscape. There's something special about them. People recognize that. And so, the religions that come in that are more colonialist, let me say, that's a bit of a hot topic, but, that come in, they will take over those spaces. And but sometimes the locals aren't willing to give up everything.
Well, and I mean, we have a lot of traditions in, supposedly in the Christian faith that are very like smack of paganism and
especially Catholicism.
Beautifully so.
Especially Catholicism. I mean, you can see that in like some Hispanic churches, Mexico. I mean, there's so much of old religion that is part of that. I mean, really, like the whole the Marian cult, and that's. I mean, I don't mean just call it a cult, but
no, but I mean, it's properly called a cult because of the definition. But not in the way that we contemporaries
and not
think of
in
cult.
The negative sense, and
right.
not in a negative sense. But the worship of Mary, and there's all kinds of aspects in there. And then we have, of course, Easter celebrations.
Right, and the Christmas tree.
Yes, all that stuff. It peeks through.
But I think that makes them interesting.
I enjoy all of it. I try and celebrate all of it. I enjoy all of it. And I love the Old Testament. I love reading the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. Those are great old stories. And I think sometimes people take them wrong. They think them as a prescription, as this is what you have to do.
Right.
But, I don't think that's what they were meant for. I think they were meant as a prescriptive, like, baby, this is not what you're supposed to do because this led to the fall of man over and over and over. Let's stop making that mistake.
Yeah.
Let's stop using our pride and to control other people.
And I love, that what it allows is a loosening of the precision of that religious language, that it allows for, it allows for one to move past fundamentalism. Yes. And that's more beautiful to me.
Move past fundamentalism, you get to the beauty, you get to the art, you get to the feeling, you get to the spirit.
Right.
That's what I want to get to.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Let's end it there.
Thank you, sir. It was so nice chatting with you.
A little mini sermon at the end there.
I can live with that.
Yeah.
Would you ever think of yourself as going into a more direct religious service toward others?
Yeah, I have thought of so I did think of UU, but UU doesn't have enough.
I'm not familiar with
firmness. Unitarian Universalist.
Oh, right. It's
not firm enough for me. I actually do like the firmness of people who grasp more, let's say, to something.
What about Quaker?
I love the Quakers.
Society of Friends.
Yeah, actually, I have hung out with Quakers, since I was a teenager. They were the coolest Christians that I knew when I was a teenager.
And I didn't know any, really? Yeah. Or know that I knew any.
I love the Quakers.
And
In fact, while I'm here in New England, when I go to New England, I'm going to try and visit some houses.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, totally.
And some of the people who I really dug hanging out with, like in art school and stuff, they were all Quakers and went to Quaker meeting, and I thought that was
you know what I
the
love
concept
about,
was cool.
You know what I love about Quakers, besides the silence, which I can totally dig that. You find your own. You find that little inner voice. That you're listening for God's message. I love that, but also when they're not doing that, they actually argue tremendously about their faith and about God and the nature of life and all that stuff. And they do it rather politely. And I just love that about Quakers, but there's so much that they argue about, but they're so polite about it, and they do so much good work about anti-violence. They're not trying to control other people, but they're doing it in a way that, really works at the roots of what we're getting to when we're trying to say, we want a better society with less violence. They really do that work. And I would like to see other Christians doing that as well, instead of inspiring bigotry, perhaps that's going to increase violence.
I saw an interview. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I just assume we're done here.
No, we're not.
But I saw an interview with someone who was... he was like a staunch Christian evangelist. He may have even been involved in television evangelism.
Okay.
I'll email you his name.
Okay. Well,
talking about coming over and realizing that what they were doing as a church by rejecting so many people who were, they were staunch anti-abortionists, and that he talked about a young woman who was going to give birth, and was had not decided whether or not she was going to give birth or whether she was going to have an abortion.
Sure.
And hearing her story essentially made him pull up roots and say, that is not the kind of Christian I want to be anymore.
Yeah.
This is more like compassion is the place from where I where I prefer to enter the world, and the way I was practicing the religion didn't allow that anymore.
Yeah.
Because it was more about politics and how politics and religion have corrupted each other.
Well, I mean, religion is always going to affect politics,
right?
Because it's a driving force in how people think and in morality and that sort of thing. But imposing is another thing, and if you're making laws that restrict other people who are not harming anybody else, if what you're preaching is causing other people pain, I think you should probably look at what you're doing, personally. I mean, is it really the good work? Or
right.
Are you doing the bad work?
Right. And I
re-examine it.
And I feel like, as a teacher, I'm bringing ideas to you that I believe are based on fact.
Yeah.
That have good science behind them.
Age appropriate.
Absolutely. But at the same time, I cannot force anyone to learn.
Right.
Just like you can't force anyone to take your viewpoint and internalize it.
Right.
And
just because something is my experience, or I've basically I can't globalize my experience to the rest of the world.
Right.
My experience is my experience. If I had, for instance, if I was attacked by a certain kind of person, if I then look across the world and I see that there are people like that in the world who look like that, who have that kind of identity, if I suddenly cut myself off from that portion of of humanity, is that a good thing? Probably not. I mean, for one thing, I am judging other people who didn't harm me,
Right.
who are just innocent out there in the world, and then I'm just cutting myself off.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between setting a boundary and saying,
Yeah.
like, don't cross that boundary.
A boundary on behavior.
Right. A boundary on behavior versus a boundary on belief. Because, science doesn't care whether you believe in it. It's still going to function according to its own laws.
Yeah.
And because even...
That's a good way to put it.
Because I don't have I don't have a stake in you believing what I believe.
Right. And that's a lot of work. I mean,
It's-
who wants to engage in that, like really getting in there and trying to change somebody's beliefs? But behavior is a whole nother thing.
Well, but don't you think that's some of our work as like LGBTQ people out in the world, is that, if your belief is that we are all evil, what happens when you face someone who checks off every one of your "these are good people" list, except
Sure.
this?
I mean, I don't think, though, that one person can get inside another person and pretend that they can fix them in some way, right?
Right.
I wouldn't want anybody to do that with me.
No.
You can only do that in kind of a passive sense, like
Sure.
doing the things like I'm doing right here is, making these videos of interviews and stuff, showing different kinds of trans people and, what they believe in, that sort of thing. I'm not trying to shame anybody. I'm not trying to control anybody. I'm just offering information.
Right.
Very much like you were doing in your classroom. You are just offering information.
Right. And
Everybody is entitled to have information too,
that and that's where I see the book banning,
Yeah.
the restriction around, the don't say gay stuff.
And who's doing that? The Republicans who talk about liberty all the time.
Well, and
Give me a break.
and who talk about, our rights are being infringed
Right.
upon. Just because I exist in the world, that should have no bearing on you and your religious beliefs.
Yep.
You feel free to pray for me if you think I'm going to hell and you don't want me there.
Sure, I'll pray for you too.
And I will think good thoughts in your direction and hope that you overcome whatever the hell it is that's, troubling you.
Yeah, unfortunately right now people are using the power of the state against us. And I must say, I've said this before, I'm a little bit scared. I mean, it's I hate to admit that I feel terrorized by it, but it feels like a terrorism.
I have to say, when I look across the country and see how how a lot of red states are restricting even information
Information,
to
healthcare.
all I can think about is, oh my gosh.
They're even restricting movement. Because if you go across a state line and then you come back,
Oh, that to me
then
is
they could put you in jail.
Well, I also think requiring a person to carry a fetus to term is a kind of enslavement.
Absolutely.
And enslavement has been supposedly outlawed for how long?
Yeah, it's quite scary to me that our judicial branch, our highest court in the land, is rolling back our rights. It's frightening to me. And people say it's decentralization. It's not decentralization at all, because what Roe v. Wade did was it kept the government from interfering with healthcare.
Right.
It protected privacy in medical care.
Exactly.
It protected autonomy. And those are issues for everybody out there.
Yes.
Not just trans people. You have to have privacy for that kind of stuff. You have to have choices about the kinds of therapies that you want for your own body. If it's an imposition from the government, I mean, that is authoritarianism right there. We're
Yes.
here, people. We are here. And I'm not somebody who's given to hyperbole, okay, I'm pretty stable, you know. This is a bad moment for our country. This is a really bad moment.
It is. But I do, I try to remain hopeful because I think that change is hard, and what we're feeling right now is the last throes of
Maybe.
the last throes of people trying to impose their views.
Maybe. I that's a very hopeful vision.
And control bodies.
That's a very hopeful vision, and that may be because you're around a lot of younger people.
Oh, yeah.
Who you see that in.
Who I see that in.
Yes.
It's like, please grow up.
Yes.
Please grow up so you can get out there and do the good work.
Right, exactly.
That said, I need to go to my other appointment.
Okay, yes.
Do you want to try to...
There I am sermonizing again.
Do you want to try to go out and have a beer? Or you need to go do your grab something to eat.
I need to map out where I'm going to go in the next couple weeks because luckily a whole bunch of people from New Jersey, New York border area just replied to me. So
cool.
but I have to all these little towns. I have to go.